Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to share my personal reflection on, I'm going to put it in quotation marks because what I am discussing today is really falls within the realm of subjectivity. Shallow versus depth YouTube tarot content. I recently watched a YouTuber talk about it, and she expressed frustrations about, people saying that there is no depth content on YouTube. A lot of content are flipping through the cards and doing unboxings and walkthroughs, and people saying that it's a lot of it is shallow content and there's not enough depth content. And she was getting a little frustrated because she creates, and I agree, she creates phenomenal depthful content, and sometimes because of the algorithm, uh, people can't find you, um, and as a result people feel like there is no good content out there. And it got me really thinking and reflecting back on my own relationship to what I used to think of as a shallow content on YouTube, my own relationship of what I thought was a depthful content on YouTube. And I wanted to share that story with you because I felt compelled to do it. Um, yeah, I really felt compelled to do it. So here we go. Not, it wasn't long ago, 8 years, maybe longer, as if 8 years, almost a decade, is not long ago, when I first became aware that there is stereo YouTube, like so many of us. And I became aware that there's such thing as indie decks out there. And I remember my first probably year or 2 years, we are consuming a lot of tarot content where people were doing unboxing, where people were sharing new decks, where people were sharing their monthly favorites, their top 10, their top 20, their top 5 all-time decks. In other words, content where really people are showcasing tools, what makes these tools their favorite tools and how they use it, but primarily showcasing this. I have spent 2 years, let's say 2 years, 2 years consuming that content. And as a result, I ended up going through a binge period where I would buy a lot of decks because at that point, for me, I wasn't yet mature enough to discern in regards to tarot whether I needed a deck or not. To me, all of the decks were so wonderful, and I thought if somebody had it and they think it's wonderful, I will love it and think it's wonderful too. So I haven't got to the level of uh, growth within myself where then I could say, now I can discern it. Now, for me, when I come across a deck, I can ask myself those questions. Do I have a deck like this in my collection? Do I need it? What will the deck offer to me? And all of that criteria of discernment for me came out of that much needed binge period. And I have a video talking about binge and purge where I needed to go through that period. And I think so many of you also had to go through that period. Not all, but I heard a lot of friends who said, yeah, I needed that period to go through in order to figure out what do I like? What do I want? It's almost like being introduced to a variety of foods of all different kinds. And unless you sample a lot of them, you don't really know how to discriminate. So I had to go through that period. And I remember how much I enjoyed those YouTubers, how much it was fun and easy breezy. And I just, it really made my weekends. It was almost like this fantastic binge-worthy content for me. Then I got to this place where I personally outgrew that, where I have got to the point where I realized I know what works for me. I know how many decks works best for me. I know how to discern between which decks come into my collection and why. And I got to the place where then I thought, okay, now what? Now I really want to go deeper with these tools. And that shifted something inside of me. And that shifted something inside of me where I wanted to look now and search for the content that tailored to the need that arose within me. There was a period of time where I was very judgmental and where I thought that I'm so sick of flip throughs, this is shallow, this is waste time. Why can't people talk about DAX? I'm so tired of people just doing unboxings. They don't bring anything new to the table. This was the attitude I carried. I scorned and looked down at people now making that content. I call that content shallow. And I was in the pocket of judgment where I felt there's not enough depth content. I'm so sick of all these YouTubers just talking about this. It's so boring. I was in that pocket for some time until one day I had to ask myself, why the fuck are you being so looking down on a content you were enjoying and loving and consuming just recently? What suddenly changed? Why back then it was okay for you to consume that content, and now suddenly you are above it? What suddenly made you above it? And I had to sit and reflect with this premise of hierarchy that I have within myself, this premise of the higher up you go, whatever is below is no longer good. And what got me thinking about this is how there's things in life where the hierarchical growth exists, but instead of scorning and looking down, I learned humility and grace. And yet, when it came to something like this, it was the opposite. Instead of being graceful and humble to where I am at, I became scornful and judgmental. A great example is this. I used to wait tables for majority of my 20s. I waited and worked in a lot of food industry. That experience has taught me to value and respect and appreciate food industry personnel, servers, any kind of service. To this day, I am, you can say, if we were to apply the stupid concept of hierarchy, I no longer work in the food industry or service. I no longer need to work in the service industry, although one can say I'm a service provider being a psychologist. And when I go to restaurant, I can go to some expensive restaurants, like $300-400 dinner for big celebration. And yet, when I'm surrounded by restaurant personnel, I have nothing but respect for them. And I value them and I value what they do because I have been there. So I tend to either tip well or over tip, but there's this level of, I get it, I've been there and I know how hard this work is. And I respect what you do. It's not easy to wait on people. It's really not easy to be in a service position for people. So there's experiences like that where they bring out humility in us, and yet there's some experiences that bring out something else, although there's still similar level of hierarchy. So I had to sit with myself and evaluate what shifted. Why suddenly this content is shallow in your head space and lesser than, and kind of like beneath you, right? And after sitting with it for some time, um, I think a lot of things came up for me personally. And I really encourage everybody to reflect on this because I think it's so important to do self-reflection, period. But one of the things that I realized is because I'm also a content creator, and I thought perhaps what's bringing it up for me is that as a content creator, I want to separate myself and my content from content out there. Fine, that's not a bad thing. If you want to do something different or you want to talk about things differently, but it still doesn't make it any better than content over here that I used to see as shallow. Not to mention, what is even shallow or depthful content? It's so within the realm of subjectivity. Just because I am no longer in a position where I benefit or value or need to see flip throughs doesn't mean that it is any less valuable. Let's not forget, for me at least, to this day, if there's a deck that I want, guess what I do first? Guess what I do first? And I think a lot of us do that too. I look for a flip through of it. So I inadvertently run back to that which I scorn, right? So I had to realize that shifting and getting in a place where now I want to talk more about how to use it and how to work with it and make YouTube channel about this topic doesn't in any way dilute, negate, siphons down what people are doing over here. It first got me to reflect on how incredibly valuable this content over here is for so many of us, for me. How when I got into tarot YouTube, this was what I needed. It made me think how many people out there who are want to get into tarot. Maybe they are in a place of a community where it is super religious and scornful and judgmental already. So they want to dip their toes in the water. They do not want to watch a serious content on, let's decipher all of the symbolism in a tarot deck or talk about history of a tarot or what archetypes stand for. They just want to see the cards. They just want to see if there's something out there for them to enjoy. Maybe they need just to see a flip through without too much embedded in it for them to be able to move past resistance to even be introduced to tarot. It got me thinking about the people who create that content. First of all, it's not easy to do a flip through, okay? Flip throughs are a challenge in of itself to talk and share and give you a feedback and what you think and your reflections is also not easy. But it got me to reflect on there's so many YouTubers who get into tarot YouTube and who really want to talk about tarot, but feel shy, feel uncomfortable to use their voice, feel overwhelmed, terrified. A lot of things might come up for them. That Flip Throughs is a great gateway. It's a great introduction where they still talk about it, but they don't have to go, into any other avenues of the tarot. And that's a great, great thing. That's a great thing. So through my own evaluation, I had to, my ego is a fucking balloon. And in my life, it's always travels up. Things happen that make it travel up. Things happen to me. I get praise, I do something that's wonderful, people like it, or I do something for myself and I love it, and my ego goes, it's like a balloon, it expands. It is my job and responsibility to notice when the balloon is starting to go up and to pull on the string and to say, okay, girl, had a good time, come fucking down to the earth. Because it is when you're close to grounded to the earth is when you are the most human. Because that's when you're closest to the rest of the humans, and all of us are so much more alike than different. So just like with this example, my balloon went up and I had to wait a second. Since when is something that I loved years ago suddenly is like, empty, shallow for me? I had to bring my balloon down. And I had to remind myself that just because it's no longer something I'm interested in doesn't make it any less valuable. It reminds me of, I will never forget this. My older sister, Helen, has taught me this lesson that forever reminds me to bring my balloon down. Years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, She had a sample sale, fashion sample sale in New York for the company she worked for. And they were selling designer sample sale for designer wear. And I was a cashier. And apart from people coming and buying tremendous amount of clothing, because it was designer clothing at a big discount, one day a postal person walked in. I will never forget. I get emotional talking about it because it's such a lesson in fucking humility and bringing the fucking balloon down. He came in, he dropped off mail, and then he walked around and he found a belt. I think it was like a Dolce & Gabbana or Roberto Cavalli belt that went from like $150 to $100 to $30 sale. And he came to the register, and I was the one ringing him up. He got this one single belt for $30. The minute he was out of the door, I snubbly looked at my sister and I said, can you believe what a cheap small sale I just made? $30. She looked at me and she said, you know what, Nat? She said, for you, $30 is nothing. For this postal person, this is the first designer item they have ever bought for themselves. For this person, those $30 was really hard to earn, and they bought something for themselves that is going to be valuable to them and remind them of maybe even this accomplishment. She, without shaming, guilting me, saying what, she calmly connected me to experience of this person and pulled my balloon down. She took it further because that experience reminded me when we moved to United States and I was 13 years old and we lived in New York City, and I worked so hard to earn my own money to buy the first pair of Gap jeans. Gap jeans, Gap in 90s was big. A pair of Gap jeans, I think, was like $40, $50, huge for denim. I remember when I bought that pair of jeans, I was so, so happy. That is experience I share with this postman. Even if I did not have the same experience, this reminder that to not only bring the balloon down, but to, to hold on to the humility and grace that just because you're somewhere else in life and somebody else is right there doesn't mean they're less than. And that was really, really important to me. And it's important to me to this day. I'm not telling you all of the story about me being judgmental about YouTube content and then getting to the other side of realizing that it's no less valuable. Because I want to tell you that I'm better than any of you. I'm not. I still judge shitload, a lot of things in my life. My balloon goes up all of the time. I'm sharing this because sometimes we all need a sister that comes and gently brings our balloon down the way my sister brought my balloon down for me. And some of you already are doing tremendous jobs getting a hold of your balloons. Some of you maybe need to hear this and just to reflect, maybe not on YouTube content, but other areas of our lives where we allow our balloons to go so high up in the sky that we lose that connection to the rest of the world, to the rest of the individuals, people with whom, in fact, we share so, so much in common. So this is what I really wanted to comment here and share with all of you. It's been, I don't know why this topic has been eating inside of my brain for several days. I've been debating, talk about it, don't talk about it. And then I just said, you know what, let it out, let it out. So here I am. So if you are watching this and you've been wanting to start YouTube channel and just talk about cars and just do flip throughs and that's your gateway, fucking do it. Do it. Do it. If you just want to have a YouTube channel and talk about anything and everything, and do it. Do whatever you want to do. Do whatever gives you joy. Do whatever gives you comfort. Do what interests you. If you are already a YouTuber that creates content and you're afraid people might judge it for being too shallow, don't worry about it. They have their balloons to worry about, and they will have to come down to the earth. So hopefully you all have a great weekend, and comment below, share your thoughts. Bye.